Let's move on to Act 4 of Othello. In Act 4, we really see Othello just completely fall under Iago's influence and under his control. And he's this act is really the one that kind of dams the love between Othello and Desdemona before we get to the final act. We do start the act. It's interesting that Iago uses a bit of reverse psychology before there was such a term. Othello brings up the kerchief, and Othello reminds Iago, hey, you remember you said that you saw Cassio with a kerchief. Notice about line 20 or so, Iago makes very light of this. He's like, oh, yeah, what of that? Like, it's interesting reverse psychology here that Iago. Um, we've seen this before, how Iago really just kind of lets people hang themselves with suspicion rather than leading them to it too heavy-handedly. So here he'd already made the implication of Cassio having that kerchief, um, and here where Othello brings it up again, Iago just makes light of it, like, yeah, what does that mean? And Othello, of course, begins to argue to Iago what Iago wants him to about, well, that's not a good thing that Cassio has my kerchief because I asked her about it, and she said that she didn't lose it. And we also know the importance of that kerchief. So this shows that Iago may have been one of the pioneers of reverse psychology, but we see it as, it's effective in letting him do his job of deception. We also see Othello really start to show his anger. He doesn't have the mask that Iago has. Othello is not good at controlling his emotions. And we see that anger really start to erupt. Things subtle, such as here, Othello interrupts quite often. If you look at the staging of the lines, Othello often won't let characters finish their lines, or he'll immediately intrude on characters' lines. And of course, this violence begins subtly. Later on in the act, we'll see the violence manifest quite severely when he openly strikes Desdemona in front of others. Notice we also have quite a bit of bodiness. We've talked about that body humor before that Iago has. Um, I don't know the effectiveness of being body at this point with Othello being enraged. Uh, this pushes Othello over the top. Basically, Iago's talking about Desdemona and Cassio lying together. And Othello says, with her. Notice Iago says, with her, on her, what you will. So there's, of course, bodiness here. And Othello's response to that is so severe that Othello falls into a trance. He kind of goes into an epileptic trance. Now, scholars have had fun kind of diagnosing the medical malady that may be here. They don't know if it's, exactly what's causing this trance, but it seems to be emotional exacerbation that Othello is just so far pushed by Iago that he falls into this trance. And it's a pretty severe trance. I mean, he's foaming at the mouth, he's convulsing. And notice that Iago says, while Othello is in this trance, work on my medicine, work. So notice that Iago's medicine's almost like poison. Well, it is poison. And then in comes Cassio, and Iago's talking about, how Othello is suffering this trance. Eventually, he is able to pull himself out of the trance. But notice what gets Othello out of the trance is he seems hypersensitive to Iago and Cassio mocking him. And this comes back to something we've talked about before, but the idea of a cuckold. And a cuckold would be a man whose wife is cheating on him, and everyone knows about it except the man. The husband is ignorant of it. That would be a cuckold. Othello is hyper aware and hypersensitive to this cuckolding. Notice that Iago says, how is it, General? Have you not hurt your head? And Othello says, dost thou mock me? Now, the implication here is that hurting your head, when Iago says this, Othello thinks that Iago's talking about horns sprouting from his head. Uh, a horned man would be kind of the symbol of the cuckold, like ram's horns would be the sign of a cuckold. So notice the really not very connected at all for Othello to from Iago saying, "Did you hurt your head?" Othello automatically thinks he's talking about him having the horn rams of the cuckold male, and Iago's like, "No, I'm not mocking you at all." Here they talk briefly about the virtue of knowing if you're a cuckold, and this kind of contradicts what they said earlier. Earlier they talked about, Othello and Iago talk about the virtue of not knowing if you're a cuckold, how that kind of the idea of ignorance is bliss. But here, Iago contradicts that. Iago says that it's better to know. No, let me know, and knowing what I am, I know what she shall be. This is around line 70. So this is yet another example of Iago can just argue whatever point he wants to. He's very knowledgeable of multiple sides of an argument, and he's able to basically spin whatever side best serves his purpose. If we move on a little bit, we have the plan here that's Othello has said earlier. He says, "I want proof. I want visual proof." I mean, Othello seems very in Act 3. He seems very, very adamant on, if you can't give me visual proof for what you're saying, Iago, it's on your head, and basically, woe be you if my wrath falls upon you. Notice here, though, the visual proof that we get in Act 4, it's not proof at all. It's very subjective, and it's a complete misunderstanding of communication we have here. Basically, this is a trap set by Iago, where Iago promises Othello by his good name, by his positivity as a friend, and by being a good man, he promises that he's going to talk to Cassio about Desdemona. And he says that Othello should hide, and Othello should just listen to what Cassio says, and that will be visual proof of Cassio and Desdemona's affair. We know, though, that Iago's talking to Cassio about Bianca, and Bianca is the whore of Cassio. Cassio's not too interested in having a commitment with her at all. I mean, she's just someone that he visits when he's in Cyprus, but definitely not marriage material for Cassio. And that's basically who they talk about here. But Othello, of course, thinks they're talking about Desdemona. And this just plays out terribly because Cassio, when Iago asks Cassio, "Word is you're going to marry her," Cassio laughs out loud and says, "I marry her? What, a customer? Prithee, bear some charity to my wit. Do not think it so unwholesome. Ha ha ha." So here, he basically Cassio says, "Why would I marry a prostitute? I'm a customer. Think better of that. I'm not a fool." And of course, Othello hears this thinking that he's talking about his wife, Desdemona. And this, for Othello at least, is proof for the affair. Now, notice though that Bianca comes in quite angry. She charges into Iago and to Cassio talking, and she charges in carrying the handkerchief. And I could see Iago, is not expecting this at all. This is not part of his plan. I can see as soon as he sees her marching down, he has to start thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because she has the handkerchief. And Cassio should have the handkerchief because that's what Iago told Othello. Iago said Desdemona gave the handkerchief you gave to her boyfriend Cassio as a love token. But here comes Bianca with the handkerchief. Notice how well Iago's able to spin it. Now, Bianca's mad because she found this handkerchief. She thinks it belongs to another woman that's another girlfriend of Cassio. She doesn't know it belongs to Desdemona. Notice, though, that Iago's able to say, "Did you see the handkerchief?" And Othello was like, "Was that my handkerchief? Yours by this hand. And to see how he prizes the foolish woman, your wife. She gave it to him, and he hath given it to his whore." So here, Iago's able to think on his feet and adapt, and he's able to spin this back into proof. Now, this handkerchief is another piece of visual proof that's very subjective because this is, Bianca has this handkerchief. Iago's able to say, well, she has it because Cassio, who got the handkerchief from Desdemona, thinks so little of Desdemona that he just gave this to his whore as a token of affection. And notice that it works. Othello is so far gone here that we kind of get that Iago doesn't have to work hard to damn the relationship. Othello, because of the insecurity he feels, because possibly he feels he's not worth the love that Desdemona is showing to him, he's very easily manipulated by this quote unquote evidence that he sees. He says around line 172, a very important line: "No, my heart is turned to stone. I strike it and it hurts my hand. Oh, the world hath not a sweet creature." Um, Basically, I think about young Goodman Brown. If you've read the story, and if you're in my class, you have. There's a point in young Goodman Brown where young Goodman Brown is in the forest. He's seen basically pillars of the community that he's trusted in their virtue above even his own virtue. And he sees these people basically revealed to be workers of the devil, like the pawns of Satan. And he keeps saying, you know what? So what if they want to follow the devil to hell? As long as I have my wife, and his wife's name is Faith. As long as I have my wife Faith, uh, then I shall stand strong against the devil. And it's interesting because the other people that young Goodman Brown sees on his journey, he actually sees them. With Faith, though, he doesn't see her right away. He thinks that he hears her, and he sees one of her ribbons float down. And as soon as he sees this, this is proof for Goodman Brown, and he says, "My faith is gone." Now, all this is like just some weird noise whispering in the forest and a ribbon. But for young Goodman Brown, because his faith in faith is so weak, this constitutes visual evidence. This constitutes proof, irrefutable proof. I think most readers see that it's completely subjective. It's interpreted to be proof for what they already suspect. Um, Now, we had in the previous act, we had Iago actually say, "Whoa, whoa, you know what? If you want me to kill Cassio, he's a dead man walking. But um, let Desdemona live." Now that changes, and I'm not really sure. I'm interested to see what you guys think on the discussion board. What changes Iago's mind? Because here, when they're talking about the plan, uh, instead of saying "don't kill her," Othello says, "Get me some poison, Iago." And Iago says, "Do it not with poison. Strangle her in her bed, even the bed she hath contaminated." So here Iago has gone from "don't kill her, let her live," to "don't poison her, strangle her in her marriage bed." And I'm interested to see what you see of that change of heart, of that movement. Maybe that was always the intent. I don't really know. I'm looking forward to see what you guys make of it. Now, we have in the next part around line 230, we've got a terrible revelation where, well, it's not a revelation. Othello's not able to wear a mask of civility around Desdemona. They're making this plan, to kill her. They can't do it yet. So he's still going to be around Desdemona. Othello's around Desdemona when also someone named Lodovico, who is an old friend of Desdemona's, is there. And Othello can't control his rage. He can't wear a mask to basically hide his anger, waiting for the plan to come to fruition. And he hits her for no reason. He strikes her, and this is in front of Lodovico, and then he leaves. So this is definitely shown that the change Othello has. Lodovico even comments on the change, like he doesn't even recognize. He says about line 257, "Is this a noble Moor, whom our full senate call all in all sufficient? Is this the nature whom passion could not shake, whose solid virtue the shot of accident nor dart of chance could neither graze nor pierce?" So he's kind of shocked at the hero that was Othello. How Othello looks now, he's kind of fallen in the eyes of Lodovico. Um, we have scene two, where Othello confronts Emilia. Now, who should Othello be confronting about his suspicions? He should be confronting his wife, Desdemona. He does that, but by the time he does it, it's too late, and his heart has already turned to stone. That was an important line here because if your heart is turned to stone, you cannot have a change of heart. Here, he basically decides to begin talking to people other than Iago about the chastity of Desdemona. But it's too late, and the evidence that he hears supporting Desdemona falls on deaf ears, or falls on ears that are already convinced otherwise. So he's talking to Amelia, and basically, when Amelia knows that Othello is doubting the virtue of Desdemona, she says, "I durst, my lord, to wager she's honest. Lay down my soul at stake. If you think other, remove your thought. It doth abuse your bosom." I like here that Amelia is very directly saying she is innocent, and if you think otherwise, you need to remove that thought because you're doing abuse to yourself. And that's exactly what he's doing. Othello is abusing himself with this suspicion of the infidelity. When Amelia leaves, though, this is proof from Desdemona's closest friend. Amelia says she is a good woman and she is true to you. Notice Othello says, "Oh, she says enough, yet she's a simple bawd that cannot say as much. This is a subtle whore, a closet lock and key of villainous secrets, and yet she'll kneel and pray. I've seen her do it." So here he's not going to believe. He chooses not to believe the basic the evidence that he's just received from Amelia, that Desdemona is loyal. And notice what comes next. He talks to Desdemona. Desdemona says, well, Othello asks her, what art thou? And Desdemona responds, "Your wife, my lord, your true and loyal wife." Othello says, "Come, swear it, damn thyself, lest being like one of heaven, the devils themselves should fear to seize thee. Therefore be double damned, swear thou art honest." And notice that Desdemona does not pause. She doesn't take a breath. She says, "Heaven doth truly know it." So here she pledges by heaven. That's something that Iago can't do because he's so evil. But Desdemona's pretty innocent. I mean, maybe not completely, but she's pretty innocent, and she pledges by heaven that she's true. This isn't enough, though, to Othello. And Othello here, because his heart is turned to stone, does not believe his wife's words. He chooses instead to believe the doubt in his own heart. Othello asks her again, "Are you not a strumpet?" And she says, "No, as I am a Christian." So here she pledges her faithfulness upon her Christianity. So this is a sacred vow that she pledges here, and it's still not enough for Othello. "I cry your mercy then. I took you for that cunning whore of Venice that married with Othello." How terrible, how savage are those words coming from Othello. Definitely, the words of tenderness that he used for earlier in the play are completely contradicted here. Um, then we get into Desdemona talking with Amelia. And Desdemona's, of course, upset. Amelia finds out, of course, that she's upset because Othello has not only hit her, but called her a whore. And so they call in Iago. I think it's interesting here. Desdemona calls in Iago because she thinks, well, maybe Iago knows something. Iago plays completely innocent on this. I mean, this is very ironic for us because we know that this is all Iago's fault. But here, notice Iago's like, "Oh, why did he do this?" And Desdemona's crying. She says, "I don't know. I'm sure I'm not a whore." Iago says, "Do not weep, do not weep. Alas the day." Notice here the irony here that Iago is comforting Desdemona with his words when he has caused all of this. Well, he's been heavily to blame for all of this happening. Notice Amelia hits it right on the head when she says, "I'll be hanged if some eternal villain, some busy and insinuating rogue, some cogging, cozening slave to get some office, hath not devised this slander. I'll be hanged else." And that's exactly what happened. So it's interesting that Iago immediately says, "Oh no, there's no such man. It's impossible." Of course he would say that. Notice Desdemona says, "If there be any such man, heaven pardon him." So this just goes to further illustrate the purity and the innocence of Desdemona, that even when confronted with the idea of such a villain that he would slander her good and innocent name for no reason, she says, "Oh, well, heaven pardon him," instead of, what others of us may be tempted to say that would not, wouldn't involve heaven at all. Notice also that Amelia, brings up the suspicion of the affair with Othello and herself. She says, "Oh, fie upon them! Some such squire he was that turned your wit," talking to Iago, "with the seamy side without, and made you to suspect me with the more." And Iago says, "Oh, you're a fool. Go to." Basically, "Oh, go away." She struck him a little bit too close here, so I like that Amelia is aware of the gossiping that people have done. She brings up the rumor about her affair with Othello, which, I don't think we have any reason to believe, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, she knows people talk, and she knows that what people say doesn't really, the truth of what they say doesn't really matter based on the destruction it can have. And I think that's interesting that Amelia is who gives us that truth. Um, we have a confrontation with Rodrigo and Iago. Rodrigo's an idiot through most of this play. And finally we have Rodrigo getting a breath of sanity and saying, "You know what? I have given you all of my money and I have nothing to show for it. I've had enough." And Iago is able to wiggle himself back into the good graces of Rodrigo because they hatch a plot. They hatch another plan that won't work, and it's a plan to kill Cassio. Um, we'll see how this plan works out in Act 5, but just a hint, it does not act out well for poor Rodrigo. Gosh, just poor Rodrigo. You have to have a little bit of, maybe not, maybe there is no sympathy for him because he just seems so. Um, Desdemona seems blind to the villainy of Iago, but we can argue that it's because of her innocence, that the innocence that she is, she just can't fathom the other dimensions of cruelty and things like that. Rodrigo doesn't have that excuse of innocence. He's just a fool that allows himself to be manipulated by Iago very well. Then we move on to scene 3. And scene 3, um, we have it's an interesting discussion that Amelia and Desdemona have about women and about wives and the nature of being a wife and fidelity. And Desdemona's like, Desdemona can't even fathom how a wife would cheat on her husband, how she could do something so cruel. Amelia gets it though, and if we think about who they're married to, it makes sense. I think that Amelia is the wife who knows that. There may be a time and place for infidelity. Look at who she's married to. She's married to the evil Iago. But there is kind of like this a sympathy to the married woman that we get here. Amelia is talking to Desdemona, and Desdemona says, these men, dost thou in conscience think, tell me, Amelia, that there be some women who do abuse their husbands, and such gross kind, meaning by cheating on them? And Amelia says, there be some such, no question. Desdemona says, wouldst thou do such a deed for all the world? And Amelia says, why, would you not? Desdemona's like, no, by this heavenly light. Amelia says, no, I neither by the heavenly light. I might do it as well in the dark. So here she's kind of being funny here. She's like, no, not by the light. You do something like this in the dark. Desdemona says, would you small vice? So this idea of, well, it's stupid not to do something so small for such a great reward. In fact, Amelia goes on to say that you would do your husband an injustice if you remained faithful and cost him the world. She says, by my troth, I think I should, and unto it when I had done, marry, I would not do such a thing for a joint ring, nor for measures of lawn, nor for gowns, petticoats. Basically, she's saying, I wouldn't do this for something small or something that didn't matter, but for all the world. It's pity who would not make her husband a cuckold to make him a monarch. So this idea of should a woman, in order to win something for her husband, to win him favor, to win him reputation, to win him honor, to win him title, should she secretively cheat on him? And Amelia says the answer is yes. Desdemona does not agree with this, though. And so we have here at the end of the act We have two women who have been treated quite cruelly by their husbands, talking about the nature of fidelity and talking about what does a wife owe to her husband, and they're not in agreement. And they're interesting foil characters as far as the differences between Amelia and Desdemona. When you look at their differences, you can actually understand who each woman is a little bit better by seeing who the other one is not. So we will finish up the play in Act 5 where everything hits the fan. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your thoughts on the discussion board. Thanks, guys.